this is a project we were really excited by. And I guess, we're going forward, we're going to look at more ways that we can bring and celebrate artists as a collective and as a community. What happens to a painting, once it enters the digital world built entirely on screens? In 2009, my guest today didn't care about screens. He cared about concrete. Working a corporate design job by day, he spent his nights as an anonymous street artist in Los Angeles. Armed with a spray can and a stencil, he tagged tributes to Andy Warhol across the city. To keep his identity hidden, he signed them with a simple sign-off: ThankYouX. Fast forward to today. Ryan Wilson, better known to the world as ThankYouX, has stepped entirely out of the shadows, and in doing so, he has completely re-engineered the boundaries of contemporary art. He is that rare breed of creator who successfully navigated the brutal, often unforgiving pivot from illegal street art to fine art, and then took a massive step further. With the traditional art world, when the traditional art world was panicking over what Web3 and the blockchain meant for creators, Ryan was already building the bridge. He didn't just digitize his art, he forced the physical and the virtual to collide. And his momentum right now is staggering. Coming off his critically acclaimed Harmony Tension exhibition late last year, he's continuing to dominate through the year. Just a few weeks ago, his piece Quiet Balance, where he physically embedded screens into canvases to explore the exact fault line where paint runs out and pixels pick up, made significant waves at Art Basel in Hong Kong. He is recently appointed to the board of governors at the Laguna College of Art and Design, where he's literally shaping the next generation of creatives. From spray painting the dead of night to historic solo shows from Sotheby's, from collaborating with musical legends like Hans Zimmer to having his work cemented in the Museum of the Future in Dubai. Last year, Wildmavins commissioned an enormous 7-foot by 14-foot original painting with the shared vision of continuing his mission to bridge the gap between digital and physical art, to create a literal metaphor for the foundation of Wildmavins. So please welcome, ThankYouX, Ryan Wilson.
Thank you. That was a great intro. Wow. I need you to introduce me for everything I do ever again.
Let me just switch this over. So you on the spotlight here. Yeah, so Ryan, thanks again, man. It's been a journey. We've had an incredible experience doing this with you. And I know the artwork means a ton to us. So it's incredible. I guess the opening question for you, how has your relationship with your collector base changed since you first started as a street artist?
Well, I think before it was interesting because nobody knew who I was. And so they'd have to find out who I was, how to get a hold of me, find out my email, and it was kind of very difficult for them. There was definitely some friction there, but my plan was to never sell art when I first started. So that layer was just not intentional, but just not understood that that was a possibility. And I would say now it's a lot more open. And I think that I actually wrote something today that said, a lot of times it's pivoted or it's pitched as like the artist or the collector, like which one's the important person in the conversation. And I rephrased it to be, it's the artist and the collector. And it can kind of be this like both can win type situation where it doesn't need to be a zero sum, like that artist, did this, or this collector, he's only good because this collector bought him. And I think it can kind of be more of like a powerful combination of the two. So yeah, that's kind of been my focus over the past, 6 years, I would say, like, especially since, I don't know, like COVID and deciding what is important. And I think people at the end of the day are important. We were like locked in rooms away from everybody. And then, in some ways that drove me to desire human connection more. And so for me, if I'm working with someone, if I'm, having these kind of like joint transactions together, whatever you want to call it, for art sales or whatever, I don't want it to just be this thing where it's like you buy something from like a screen and then that disappears, whatever. I like there to be some sort of dialogue and almost like a feedback loop, So it's changed significantly. And I think that it'll only keep changing as technology evolves and barriers are brought down. Yeah.
Yeah. So with our project, specifically, we obviously talked about it, planned about it. did research and whatnot about what this piece could mean. You know, with Wildmavins, this piece directly, you know, you're approaching a absolutely enormous canvas. You're walking up to it, it's blank. You know, what's that process look like?
People ask me this question a lot, like, how do you know how to start? And then the other question, they say, how do you know when it's done? The question of how do I know what to start is you just go, and then it feels intuitive. There, like, you can feel a more natural flow to it. And then once something feels like there's a certain motion to it, then you kind of follow that and let that lead the way. And then the other question of how do I know when it's done is, you know, for this, it was interesting because normally the way I know it's done is once it's hung in a collector's home, because collectors all have different styles of homes, have different furniture, decor, other artworks. And it's, to me, my artwork interacting in those rooms with like those other pieces, whether it's furniture, wall color, other artworks in the room. And then with this one, it was like, you know, okay, the idea, the concept that, you know, we all came up, like Wildmavins and I came up with together was this will be divided into multiple pieces. The pieces will then be owned by, like we'll create like a digital element to it. And those will be owned by the founding members of Wildmavins. And so kind of going into it like that, you look at it almost each section through like a microscope as you go, and just kind of creating section by section, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think there's like that relationship and being able to like create new ways of those relationships existing, whether it's in their home or beyond, whether it's digital or physical. Because I think part of the thing that we thought was so interesting, like our relationship or the community's relationship to where that exists 10 years from now, ultimately can represent a whole bunch of different things and equals across that as well, right? Like multiple people, multiple places around it. So I guess with that, like, did creating, you know, what was the process of creating something like this for a curated community? Did it change the way that you approached it or the output in any way?
I think just more so focusing on it feeling cohesive throughout, but having different sectors, if that makes sense. So kind of like what you were saying earlier, like there might be members that you have that are more into wine and less into watches, and then some that are more into watches, less into, so like it's this overall thing, but like it feels like some people might lean towards certain sections of the painting depending on what their eye catches. And that's kind of how I wanted it to feel, where it still feels cohesive throughout. And if I don't know, like if you're looking at the piece, and I know we don't have it pulled up right now, but if you're looking at the piece as a whole, it feels like this cohesive thing all throughout. But then once you get close to it, you're like, oh, this feels like its own little community right here. This feels like its own little micro community within that bigger community. So that's kind of how I approached for this specific piece.
And then you somehow know when it's finished, whenever that feeling is, I guess. Or
I also with
otherwise,
yeah, with something like this, you have to kind of you have to have the time to sit with it. And I think for me, making it so that I can, you know, sit with it for a few days and just stare at it. Maybe I'm working on something else and I look at it and I'm like, you know, if I can't decide, if I feel like something's not missing, you know, then it's, you know, you start to add stuff. You start to be like, oh, this part feels too messy. Let me clean this up. Let me make this part, you know, more significant. I think once I started, you know, you go through all those processes. And then once you sit there for like a week or so and you're like, that piece is done. Like, I don't have anything else to add to that. So that's, for me, my piece is done. And then like, now it's like, okay, bring it into the digital, adding 3D elements into it, as you showed on the teaser. And yeah, which is done in like Cinema 4D. And then dividing it up into the pieces that we can then deliver to the community.
And what does that process actually look like? Like from when it's completed on your wall to the scanning, you know, kind of the tech behind it all that you used?
So it's funny because it's like very high tech, but with low tech, if that makes sense. So like using, because this is such a large piece, if it was like a smaller piece, like this piece behind me, I could scan it. I could take like one super high res photo of it. But with this, it's like, it's so large that you essentially have to like take a bunch of high res photos together. And then with the help of AI and things like that, like you have to like composite it together. And sometimes within that, there'll be like a thing that's kind of wonky. So you have to go and be like, oh, we have to redo it all over again, you know? And yeah, like, you know, full transparency, we went through a few phases and we're like, oh, you know what? It's not picking up this section as well. Let's redo it. Because we really wanted to focus and have the output be the absolute best, you know, that we thought it was the best. And so it's literally standing there with a camera and taking pictures section by section and then compositing it together. From there, it's then dividing it into the sections and then running it into Cinema 4D. And with Cinema 4D, you're essentially adding a very basic, you know, noise so that you see like the brush stroke. So it's like the brush strokes essentially like come to life, and like what feels like flat on a canvas now has this like texture to it, and it feels like this motion, and it kind of gives it this whole new depth to it. Obviously then like adjusting the lighting on those pieces basically in the digital realm, because it is a 3D program. So then you can adjust the light so that now this brush stroke has like a slight shadow and it feels like even higher. And so that's what I really love about this process of taking something that's physical and bringing it into the digital world. There's no more kind of, you know, like, here's this canvas and that's all you get type mentality. It's like, well, what else can we do with this, and how far can we go with this?
So with that technology, I guess, you know, obviously doing things like Cinema 4D and AI and beyond, like, are there things that you're thinking about as an artist through that lens, I guess, you know, that you think might change over the next 5 years that you're really excited about, you know, how we can evolve that experience?
Yeah, I mean, the hot topic with like every artist and, you know, gallery that I talk to is like AI. And I actually, like, even though I used AI like for like a composite element to something, I have never personally used AI as like an output. So, you know, and that's not taking away from people that do, but I've just never, for me, I haven't found my like footing or I haven't found like my sweet spot for what I think that looks like. And I'm kind of just more like using it for different tools to get the faster end result that I want, not like, hey, create this thing that da 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 da. Because I think for me, creating is the fun part, and I want AI to do the things that I, you know, don't want to do, like sit there and like tweak every little thing that I've done, you know. So yeah, I do see AI just blowing up, and it's already has, but I think that it's gonna change how artists think, and I hope that there's still human touch to things, because I think that to me is very special. And yeah, that's all I can say. You know, I don't have much more than that. It's like I'm sitting here, I use tools, I use Claude Code, I use ChatGPT every day, but I don't use them for like, hey, make my art. So yeah, that's my personal take on it.
Yeah, there's a called a thesis document that we've been building called The Last Real Things. And it really underscores exactly that. Like, whether it's art or these other things that are human made, irreplaceable, AI can replicate nearly anything now in the snap of its finger. But the idea of provenance and time being irreplaceable is sort of like a really interesting thing, and genuinely like the beating heart of what we believe Wildmavins is and will be in the future is a community and a celebration of that. You know, whether it is obviously art and it's paint on canvas, or it's a timepiece that's 60 years old, or a car that was made in the 1960s, or sports memorabilia. It's like irreplaceable. It's uniquely human masterly made in that time. And there's something in that, I think, that as we progress forward through this new horizon is going to become incredibly valuable to people.
It's also interesting when you say something like that, like we're kind of treating like moments like time capsules, like that 1960s car, that painting from the 80s, you know, all those kinds of things. There's also, just to play devil's advocate, there is the other side of it where you could look at technology and you can see, you're going to be able to look back in 10 years and see the moments as the technology like went like this. Like, you know, you go from like virtual reality, you know, or like old vintage AI essentially, and what that looked like. And then you're going to see this boom in like 2025 that just goes like up, and then 2026 is just going to go even higher, and then 2027 is going to go even higher. And I don't know how high it goes before it kind of plateaus and everything is just like, you know, the same. I don't know, like highest technology. I don't really know like how can it just go forever, you know? But that is an interesting thing to look back on. Because when you look back at like old video games that you played as a kid, at the time you're like, these graphics are insane. I'm playing hockey. This is crazy. And then you look back now, you're like, this is the worst graphics I've ever seen. And I think the same can be, you know, with AI technology, and I think a lot of technologies. But I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm kind of open to seeing how it all plays out. But I still strongly believe that there will always be a desire for a human hand touching something. And I think that yeah.
No, I agree completely. And yeah, I mean, absolutely, the idea of, you know, Super Nintendo games and stuff like that, resurfacing those again is an incredible experience, especially when you play an Xbox today.
Or like imagine you're like pulling out a painting from like 2005 and someone's like, whoa, and like the nostalgia that you get for like a video game on a different level, you're like, wow, someone painted this. You know, like that's kind of a funny thought too. Like showing people things like, look what I have, like my dad's storage unit, and you know, like look at this, and it's like some old you know, Warhol screen print or something, and everyone's like, what? So this guy actually did this? Like why? Yeah,
absolutely, man. So on that idea of, I guess, even collecting itself, you know, Christy, my co-founder and partner and wife, and all things that I do in life, has been active in Web3 and art for many years as well. And one of the things that she actually mentions and talks about a lot is how supportive in the world of Web3 and digital art, you know, artists are of each other and collecting of each other. And you know, two things, I guess. Is there a correlation that you see in obviously the physical world, like physical art, that you would see in digital art? And then I guess, you know, similarly, how, you know, or what are some of the artists, I guess, digital or otherwise, that you're collecting and you're really excited about?
Yeah. Well, one, I think it's just easier to collect digital, you know, especially when a platform makes it almost too easy to buy, where you could buy with a credit card and then it transfers over, you know, and sends it to your wallet. That there's so much more friction of like going to a gallery, looking at a piece, finding something, or even just like emailing a gallerist and seeing how much it costs and then having it shipped to you. Like there's just different little friction points. And I love seeing art in person, but at the same time, like my mind has been opened up to like a whole different way for collecting. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like the things I've been collecting. You know, like I love any artist that's kind of pushing boundaries, or just going against the grain of something. I think that Delta Sauce is a very cool artist right now that's very consistent and has like a very cool aesthetic going on. And I think it's very consistent, and they're just nonstop. And, you know, he's a very nice guy as well, which I like. And then, yeah, as far as like the physical world, how it translates, I don't collect as much physical personally. For me, you know, like I'm not like a big, you know, I don't have like a huge collection, you know, like I'm not like a big collector, like someone like Seed Phrases or something. So, you know, I have limited wall space. I have, you know, then like my wife has to also want it to have it on our walls as well. So that's like another conversation if we're buying something. And then, you know, when it's digital, I can just be like, well, this is just for my personal collection, you know, so I can buy stuff. And yeah, so I'm trying to think what the last thing I bought was. You know what it is for physical stuff, I buy stuff that I think has almost like inspired me rather than like my peers in a way. It's like I almost like I save up for like the big things more than I do a bunch of little things versus like digital. I'll do like a bunch of like little things on like newer artists and things like that to kind of help them get started. But like, I have like a little Sam Gilliam piece, who's like a big inspiration of mine. That's like an original piece. And then I have like a Frank Stella hand finished edition like of 60. That's like this collage thing that was like done with his hands. It's like 6 feet tall and things like that, because those are artists that are heavily, influencing me. So for those, like having those at my house continue to inspire me and stuff like that. But I would say it's much harder to buy physical than it is digital,
Yeah.
But then at the same time, there's also a friction with crypto, so like if you look at something where it's like, if you're buying it with crypto, what chain is it on? What wallet do I have? All that stuff. That's another whole, friction layer. But I think that there's ways around that in the future. And yeah, some platforms make it easier than others. Yeah.
So I guess recently, you had a show in Hong Kong with some really innovative pieces. But
Mhm.
would love to just touch on those, kind of what came out of that process at Art Basel for you and obviously the people that acquired those pieces.
Yeah. So the Hong Kong process was actually pretty amazing. I spent a lot of time in Asia, mostly Korea. I would say I've been to Hong Kong before, but I spent a lot of time in Korea. So like to get invited to do Art Basel Hong Kong was great. And, I wanted to show something that was innovative and that would stand out. But I also wanted to show something that translated to the traditional people who would, be showing up and not just do like, here's a screen with art on it. I wanted to stand out within the section of 0-10 where we were. And so one of the things I've been doing for years now is embedding screens inside paintings, which I refer to as like hybrid paintings. The series I did was called Perception. And the concept was all just, if you're standing and look at these pieces, it's 3 different ways you can perceive things. And there was one that was called Looking Glass Self, which focused on kind of like the magnification of things. So like if you're looking at, this piece is a great example of that. If you're looking at this entire Wildmavins piece that I created, if you're focusing on just like, the middle, like there's like this black spot and like the right of the middle kind of thing. Like if you're just focusing on that and you're too close to it, you're not seeing the full picture. You might really love this one section, but you're not seeing the rest of it. And that's not saying it's good or bad. It's just like, that's your choice, but it does change the way that you perceive the full art piece. The other piece was called Finally I See It. And it's kind of an ironic title because in the actual digital element of that piece, there's this like glitching fogged glass that keeps going over the art and it keeps blocking the art. So it kind of floats around it, kind of showcasing that like, information that we get is also kind of trying to be blocked or, you kind of have to like look through these moments to see what the actuality is. So, and then this piece, the piece that's on the screen right now is called The Quiet Balance. And this kind of stood as like the centerpiece. And this one was more about like, it's this artwork, both digitally and physically, is feeding into itself. And so it basically is like, your own balance of what information you want to take in, how much you want to let it affect you, how much you want to let, other outside information change, whether that's like art, media, news, anything like that. And so, I thought that telling the story digitally and physically was, very cool and provocative. So that's what I did. And this piece went to a really cool collector in, from there that, collects like Picassos and Catalan and like all these like really classic, like top level artists. And so I think this was his second piece that ever has any sort of digital element to it, which is very cool for me. And then hopefully that opens up to them being more interested in digital and diving into what else is out there.
Super cool, man.
Yeah. And then the other pieces actually, ironically, are now shipped all the way back to Miami for a collector in Miami. So it's like they flew all the way to China just to get flown back to Miami. That's how the world works,
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And as always, and we'll be in touch, and looking forward to seeing you in the community.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Much love. And yeah, I can't wait to see, how this all progresses.
Thanks, man.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.